Welcome to JLive. I'm Laura Mandel, JArts Executive Director, and it's great to be with you for JLive, our JArts virtual series of bite-sized conversations about life and Jewish art with the best artists with Boston connections. Today, we are very privileged to be with artist Beverly Sky, who is an incredible artist who works heavily in fiber, installation work, and more, and has extensive experience in facilitating community-created works all around the greater Boston area and beyond. So welcome, Beverly.
Thank you. Good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So, okay, before we look at some of your work, let's start at the top. I was actually a little bit shocked when I came to learn that you were born in a displaced persons camp in Salzburg to Holocaust survivor parents. And I can only imagine what an impact this has had on you, on your work and more. So tell us a little bit about your childhood, your parents, and how you came to live in the US.
Well, both of my parents were Holocaust survivors, and they met in a slave labor camp in Poland in 1943. After the war, I was born in a displaced persons camp in Salzburg, Austria. Because of the post-war restrictions on immigration in the United States, in 1949, we moved to Sudbury, Ontario, Canada. And my father was from a family of farmers, and my mother was a concert pianist before the war. In 1956, we finally immigrated to Rego Park, Queens, New York, and became citizens in 1962. And one of the images, that's a picture of me and my father, and that's in the displaced persons camp. And I look like a little doll with a look of horror on my face. And the next image is a picture I found online of what the displaced persons camp looked like, one of the very few images of that particular camp. And finally, a picture of my mother, who was a concert pianist in just outside of Krakow, Poland.
Wow.
Um,
I just have to tell you, you look a lot like your father in that photo.
yes.
Absolutely adorable.
Oh, thank you.
So
I've got my father's nose for sure.
That's a great photo. So you mentioned growing up in Rego Park then, and I think it's fascinating that you told me that the Rego Park Community Center, which was actually where the famous Art Spiegelman was a member, really had a major impact on you. And you mentioned specifically that many of the members had Holocaust stories like yours, but that no one ever talked about them. So what was this experience like for you?
That's right. And Artie was a year ahead of me, and it was a very wonderful community program for kids. And we'd all go there after school and hang out, and there were dances and events like that. But nobody ever talked about the Holocaust. And the director of the program was himself a Holocaust survivor, Mike Schell, who is to this day my mentor. You know, it wasn't until Artie's book came out, Mouse, which has recently resurged in popularity, suddenly became #1 on the New York Times bestseller list after it was banned in the South. So it wasn't until after Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List and the Shoah Foundation came out that people really started to talk again about what their experience was, my mother in particular. My family came, there are two types of Holocaust survivors, those that can't stop talking about it and those who never speak of it. And my parents were both in the latter group. And it wasn't until about 1992 that my mother started to tell a little bit of the story. But as we were growing up, there was lots of secrets and lies and stuff like that, but silence.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I've broken with that tradition.
clearly, and I love it. So, okay, before we get to more of your artwork, I think it's your backstory and how you came to be the artist you are. I think it's fascinating because before you became an accomplished artist, you told me that you came from a background in publishing and in macrobiotics, and you've done some really cool and interesting things. So tell us a little bit about the publishing company experience and how that had a hand in leading you to become the artist that you are.
Well, I met my former husband in Boston as part of the macrobiotic community that was led by Michio Kushi in 1967. And we moved to Japan, where we lived for 7 years. We had both of our children were born there. And while we were there, we decided to start a publishing company called Autumn Press, which we thought would harvest information about Asia for the West. And our first publication was a book that my ex-husband, Nahum Stiskin Daniels, wrote called The Looking Glass God, about Shinto. And the second book that we published was the Book of Tofu. And the Book of Tofu became the guide for vegetarians and people who wanted to find alternative ways of eating. Before the publication of the Book of Tofu, you couldn't find tofu anywhere in Boston. You had to go to Chinatown downstairs. After 2 years after the Book of Tofu, you could buy tofu at the Stop and Shop. And it engendered an entire worldwide movement. And I guess that's one of the books that I was most proud of. I was the head of design and production for the company. The other book that we published, and we published 28 in total, was Nuclear Madness by Helen Caldicott, which was the first manifesto of the anti-nuclear movement. And that was also something that we were very proud of.
Wow. So you really have had a hand in changing the world and social justice through much of your work for a very long time now.
In a very tiny way, it's, yes.
Wow.
I mean, in a very tiny way. I didn't write them. I didn't create the movements, but, you know, I just made them look presentable.
Very important role. Okay, so if we fast forward, after living in Japan, you moved to Brookline.
Yes.
And you told me, I think this is so cool, you were a founder of the River Street Artists Project in Waltham, Rock Bottom Artist Studios in Somerville. So you really found your place in the arts community here.
Yeah, actually, Brickbottom.
Oh, excuse me, Brickbottom. Sorry about that.
Rock Bottom is, I don't know where Rock Bottom is, but Brickbottom, yes, I was one of the 100 artists who founded Brickbottom Studios. And I started my papermaking career there. I had studied papermaking with at Rug Road with Josina and Bernie Toll. And at Brickbottom, I was fortunate enough to be able to make my own papermaking studio for 28 years. Wow. At some point, I realized that I got tired of the same thing. I did a lot of birch trees in landscapes, and they were huge sellers because people like birch trees in their landscapes. And I just got tired of it. It felt like I couldn't expand my creativity in that medium. And I learned about fabric collage through a project with Clara Wainwright and her Faith Quilts project. So I'm a narrative fiber artist. I tell a story with my work, and we're not there yet. But these are some Torah covers that I designed for Rosalind Dale Hebrew Senior Life, the Four Seasons.
Beautiful.
There. And I just wanted to finish saying that as a narrative artist, I do a lot of research on all the projects that I do. I have a studio currently at Fenway Studios, and I've been involved with developing a gallery, a not-for-profit space there. So the Secret Synagogue, I think, is the next one I'd like to talk about. I think that's great. Slide.
Yeah, well, and I just want to say before we go into what this is, I think it's fascinating how you have sort of this career trajectory, as you've said, of, you know, your own work, and you have this incredible array of projects you've done in the community. And I think many of us may know about some of these projects and not realize that they're your work. So I feel like we're very lucky today to hear from you about these pieces. And as you started to mention, you told me that you created the Secret Synagogue because Rabbi Sarah Pash Orlo, formerly who was the chief rabbi of Hebrew Senior Life, and some of us may know, had worked on some projects together. So tell us a little bit more about what we're seeing here.
Well, first of all, anonymity seems to have followed me a good deal of my life. And it's true. A lot of my really big projects don't have my name emblazoned all over them, but I had a good deal to do with them. So Rabbi Sarah Pash Orlo, who was formerly the head of Hebrew Senior Life, and I had worked on a few projects together. And when Newbridge on the Charles, a senior retirement community, was being constructed, she asked if I would design a secret synagogue. The plans included a large multi-use community space with a stage at one end and a small storage space at the other. And the idea was to create a sacred space for services that did not look like a synagogue or even look particularly Jewish, since the residents of Newbridge are not all Jewish. So I began with, and you'll see in the first slide here, I changed the ceiling into a vaulted ceiling with lots of tiny little lights to delineate the space. And at the bottom, you can see a distant view of what the tree of life looks like. And the space that I designed was these very large curved doors that I hired Mario Con, a wonderful Boston sculptor, to carve and paint the doors with the theme of the tree of life. And what Mario created was an 18-foot high by 20-foot abstract tree of life section, like a cutout of a tree, as if you were standing with your nose to the bark of an enormous tree. And I think the next slide is a detail of Mario's work. It's quite
Stunning.
extraordinary.
Stunning.
And the doors are magnetic, and when they close, they have a secret lock at the base, which sometimes even the rabbis can't figure out how to open. So when you open the doors, there's kind of, they open up into, so it's kind of creates a circular space.
Wow.
And the interior is painted with a wonderful gold patina. And the interior inspiration was the burning bush. So I sewed the kind of organza parochet curtains with flame-colored fabric, and the Torah mantles are made of ultra suede. And see in the images, you can see the reading table that I designed. So the reading table pushes back underneath the Torahs, and for services, it comes out. It has a space at the base for flowers or some kind of ornament. And on the sides are places where the Torahs can be, extra Torahs can be rested. And when you push the reading table back in and close the doors, you would never know that it was a synagogue.
Amazing.
The next image is a close-up of the Torah mantle covers. And the one in the center is the High Holiday one, which is kind of like a beautiful like lace covering for specifically for the high holidays.
It looks very bridal, which feels very meaningful.
Yeah, well, the Shekhinah. I
Exactly,
want to,
right?
traditional Torahs tend to be very too masculine like.
Yeah.
And in doing my research on Torah mantles, there are some that are more Shekhinah-like, more flared,
Beautiful.
more eased.
I have to ask you one specific thing. Where did you learn to sew?
Thank you very much. I hate sewing.
No.
Oh yeah.
I have a love-hate relationship with sewing. Tell us more.
Well, so first of all, my mother, when we first moved to Rego Park, my mother used to take in sewing. That was something that she did to make a little extra money. And she tried to teach me how to sew, just like she tried to teach me how to play the piano. And it just didn't work. I can play fur-elise and I can stitch a straight line. That's the limit of my sewing talent. I just don't like the machine. I'm not good at math, and I never get the measurements right. And
and yet somehow you create these incredible pieces.
So often I'm a very collaborative artist, and I tend to associate myself and engage people who do know how to sew. And although I might come up with some design, those people are often very instrumental in creating the final image. Often they're the sewing experts, and they often tell me, okay, thank you very much.
I love it.
I want to talk a little bit about the Interfaith Chapel.
Great, let's do it. I know we have a photo.
That is also one of my favorite design projects, also at Newbridge on the Charles. And so keeping in mind that Newbridge is a multi-faith community and needed a sacred space where families could go, a small space where families could go to celebrate, meditate, pray, or grieve. The space was small and odd-shaped, and you can see in the image on the left, this is what the raw space looked like. It had a drop ceiling in the middle with a very tall chimney-like skylight. I had the room covered in white oak panels and had the interior of the skylight lined with mirrors and mirrored light bulbs. And from a steel armature, I hung 52 teardrop-shaped bottle glass pendants. So you can see as we scroll up, so the middle image is, when you come into the room, it doesn't look like there's much there. It's empty, except for the chairs. And you can see a few of these teardrop-shaped glass shapes coming down from the ceiling. And then on this, the next image, you can see a side view. You can see how they kind of descend a little bit into the space. But the last image is if you're standing underneath it and looking straight up, you're looking at infinity. It looks like,
it looks so Kabbalistic too.
It does. It does. And you can't get a good image of it because of the mirror effects. Even those black spots are the aluminum based light bulbs. So you can't see the light. You just see the light reflected. And so the research that I did for this, I did once again, a lot of research, but one of the inspirations was the Portia speech from The Merchant of Venice. And the speech goes, "The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven. Upon the place beneath it is twice blessed. It is blessed him that gives and him that takes." So that was, the glass pendants reminded me of this gentle rain from heaven. And I also hung them in the glass windows, giving the suggestion that when you're in this space, we're surrounded by this gentle rain and the quality of mercy. So there's a lot of symbolism in design work. I think if it's good design work, it goes beyond just how it looks, that it, opens your vision to something else or takes you to a different place.
Yeah. Even just this photo does. I mean, it makes me want to stand there and just experience this. It's stunning, but I see the layers of meaning, no pun intended.
Right. People have told me that they go into that room sometimes and just lie down underneath the skylight. And
wow,
that's powerful. So
it's really powerful.
So the next project I'd like to talk about is the faith quilts, which I would say is probably the biggest project and most incredibly rewarding project that I've ever worked on. For 2.5 years, I was the creative director and worked with a group of 30 congregants, men and women at Temple Beth Zion in Brookline. Together, we collaborated and created 2 14-foot by 7-foot tapestries that express our individual and group connection to Judaism. Participants aged in age 8 to 92.
Wow.
And by the way, these are enormously heavy pieces. Each one must weigh at least 50 or 60 pounds. It takes 3 people to carry them. We met for 8 months before we started working. And Meredith Joy, who was the person who first introduced me to Clara Wainwright and this Faith Quilts project, was the kind of the organizer and communicator of our group, said after 8 months, if we don't start to make something, I'm going to quit. And so each of these participants had one of the squares you can see. And we had a lot of discussion about what their square would be, how they would make it. I did a lot of aesthetic guidance, I'd say. I also brought bags and bags of specific kinds of fabric, silks, velvets, suedes, that people could pick and choose when they're making their image. So it's, what this is fabric collage. And fabric collage comes out of the free quilting movement, where you use fabric as a painting medium. You kind of come up with an idea and you cut and glue and then top stitch these pieces, and you have what's called fabric collage. So
stunning.
There's a link you can go to, and I made a video of the process. I had 52 hours of video of our process that I turned into a 35-minute video. You can go to YouTube. I think you can put that link up. It's a wonderful video about how the process works and how people work together. And it also highlights each individual's square.
It's beautiful. So, the link is in the chat for anyone interested.
Oh, the link is in the chat. Good.
Yep, absolutely.
And then finally, what my most recent project is with another group of TBZ women creating a new Bimmer cover for the TBZ Bimmer. And we called ourselves the Bimmers. And this was another amazing, you know, you get a group of people together and you start talking about an idea, or in my case, I wanted to do a new cover. The old cover was very tired. And I wanted to do something that would bring together the two faith quilts in the middle. And so it had to be something that was tiferet, kind of beautiful. And after many discussions with the rabbis, Rabbi Rav Claudia and Rav Tiferet, and Rav Susan Schnorr, Noam Sender, Gary Cohen, a group of people, the idea just started to get clarified. And Susan Schnorr was the one who came up with the name Breshit Bimmer, which is where our story begins. And the next thing was, she mentioned that we have a lot of families, and I wanted to make it playful. And so we came up with the idea of the Aleph Bet. And so how to put the Aleph Bet onto a Bimmer cover? I started thinking about it and came across some Tibetan prayer flags. And Tibetan prayer flags as a shape and a vehicle for each of the letters. Traditional, well, anyway, prayer flags are meant to send energy into the world, and using these Aleph Bet letters kind of did that. And part of my research was I found this Magen David, which contains all 24 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, and that's now the center mandala. So you can see where we went from the color priming and testing to the rough, checking out different fabrics and colors. I wanted rainbow colors. And then to the next slide, where you'll see each of the 6 women in the group had 3 or 4 prayer flags that they individually stitched. And the one on the right, you can see was done by Susan Schnorr, and very playfully, there's the hey, and she wrote in above here, hey, which stops everybody.
I just love that.
it just brings a lot of fun. So it's playful, but it's also powerfully meaningful to those congregants. And here is the laying out. Meryl Finkel and Beth Harris were instrumental in assembling this, because like I said, I really don't sew. And other participants were Naomi Ribner and Lauren Garlick, who did a lot of the beading and stitching of the mandalas. And there are 2 mandalas on their side, which I don't have an image of right now, but one on the right side of the Bimmer is a mandala with the letter Lamed, with the letter Bet, and on the left side, the letter Lamed. Bet is the first letter of the Torah, Lamed is the last letter of the Torah. And there are elliptical dots before the Bet and after the Lamed, and that was inspired by Gary Cohen, meaning that the story keeps on going. When we finish the last letter, we go back to the beginning and we start all over again. That's what the function of an ellipse is. And when you put the Beit and the Lamed together, you get the Hebrew word for love. Excuse me, you get the Hebrew word for heart, Lev.
Lev.
And Lev. What could be more powerful than a heart full of love, particularly for the Torah, but for each other in a very challenging world?
I just have to say, Beverly, that to me could not be a more perfect summation of who you are as an artist, because I've been having a lot of conversations recently. Artists really are leaders, and you don't necessarily lead in the same way as politicians or the like, but your skill in bringing people together and in bringing concepts to life in collaboration with others is, to me, the ultimate definition of leadership. And I think it's just incredible how you bring learning and thoughtfulness to all of these projects. We are very, very lucky to have you in our community here. And I'm so thankful for this last half hour. And I think the answer is we have much more to discuss. So we are going to call this part 1 and figure out where this goes, because you are really incredible. Thank you.
I'm blushing.
No, really, I am so glad we got to know each other through something a few years ago, because you are really just an inspiration. And I want to say thank you for leading us with your vision and with your heart, Lev, as you said. I want to go on a tour around town of all these pieces you've created, because they're just stunning. Maybe we'll do that one day. So stay tuned in case that's a next J Arts program. And I just want to say thank you so much, Beverly, to be continued.
Shalom. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Shabbat shalom to everyone. We'll see you
Shabbat
soon.
shalom. That's right. Thank you. Bye-bye.